Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Mark Henry. I'm a senior engineer with Open-AudIT's North American office located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today, we're going to be talking about how to develop custom queries with Open-AudIT. All right, so just a couple of quick points before we get started today. We will be sending along an email after today's webinar, which will include a link back to this recording. In the future, you can also find the link on Opmantic's website under the Learn section. During the presentation, we've got a couple of people who are going to be keeping track of any questions you submit. Please feel free to use the GoToWebinar Q&A panel, question and answer panel anytime, or the chat window. Depending on which version of GoToWebinar you're running, it might either be called chat or it might be called questions. So use either vehicle. They'll get to us and we'll try to address them during the presentation. At the end of the presentation, when we close out, you'll be presented with a short 3-question exit survey. Please take a couple of moments and answer the questions truthfully. It's really, again, it's just 3 questions. How did you like the content of the webinar? How did you like the speaker? And what other subjects would you like to have in the future? We value your opinion. It's what drives all of Open-AudIT's, everything from the features and functionality we put in our products to what we put on our wiki and the webinars that we put on. So today we're going to talk about Open-AudIT and how to create custom queries. We often use the term reports interchangeably with queries, and we'll talk a little bit. There are actually 3 different types. There are queries, reports, and summaries. We'll talk about each briefly, but we're really focusing today on queries. We're going to go into some detail about how to piece together the different tables and fields in Open-AudIT and create pretty much any kind of report you want quickly and easily. And of course, to be able to create a report, you also need to be able to troubleshoot your custom query to make sure that it's actually functioning, it's working. And then, how do you do that? How do you get it put together? And then the last thing we'll do is we'll touch on some final resources that are available to you in case you get stuck building your custom query and where you can look to for help. So where does this fit in with the IT Service Management Maturity Model, or the ITSM? This is kind of a Gartner resource based on the ITSM layout. If you're starting to look in kind of support for level 1, kind of a reactive atmosphere, this is going to give you information about an inventory of your overall system. It's going to help you initiate problem management processes, and it will also lead toward alerting and event management. And that's, again, not really from a performance standpoint, because Open-AudIT is a static auditing tool. It gives you a photograph, a static moment in time about your network, but it can create reports on a schedule, and then you can actually use those to alert people on the addition of devices, installation of software, the addition of modules to routers, those kinds of things. But it will also help you build into level 2. It'll help you analyze trends, predict problems, and automate your responses. And that, of course, will lead into level 3, helping you move into more of an IT as a service provider, help you understand your costs as well as the costs of the customers that you service, and help you integrate multiple processes together. And those all lead more towards a level 4 responsiveness, where your department's operating more as an IT as a strategic business partner, where IT and business is more collaborative, right? You're working together with your lines of business, with your customers, and of course that allows you to do a lot of business planning. And of course, the further up the ITSM maturity model you go, you're increasing overall performance of the IT team, and you're returning a higher value to your organization. So what parts are in today's solution? Today we're going to be talking about really one product, Open-AudIT, but we're going to be talking about the 3 different licensing levels. So Open-AudIT comes in a free and open source version called Open-AudIT Community. We'll be touching on some features and functionality there. We're also going to be touching on some features and functionality that are only available in the Open-AudIT Professional and Enterprise versions as well. So we'll be touching on all 3 of those pieces today. So some general references for you. Just so you're aware, you can get a copy of today's PowerPoint in a PDF. It's available if you're watching this live. You can download it in the GoToWebinar handouts panel. If you're coming here and you're looking at this either on YouTube or on the GoToWebinar as a static resource, please come to the opmantic.com website, go to the Learn section, select Webinars. You'll find this webinar there and the PowerPoint copy of this presentation. So you can get all of these links directly, and you can just copy them and paste them into your browser. So 3 references you should have to start out with. That's the Open-AudIT homepage on our wiki. You should also be aware of the Open-AudIT forums, a fantastic interactive way to post questions, talk to other Open-AudIT users, share code snippets, share queries, share your own summaries, and best practices as well. You can also find an additional resource in the Opmantic questions board area. We do have a custom dedicated area of the questions board for Open-AudIT, and that link is here as well. So let's talk about queries, reports, and summaries, the differences, and how to edit each. So the biggest pieces of the puzzle are understanding that there are really 3 different types of reports in Open-AudIT. There's a query, which is really a fast filtered SQL statement that allows you to pull information stored in the database out and present it in a formatted way. There are summaries, which give you kind of an organized menu level before you get to the results of the query. So you can organize things, for example, by types of operating systems or types of equipment or types of modules or services installed. And then once you click on that level of a menu, then you burrow down into the actual query itself that returns the content. The final third piece of that are reports. So reports are only available in the professional and enterprise licensed editions. They're specialized time-limited queries. And what I mean by that is, for example, you might say, give me a list of all the devices found in the last 30 days, right? Give me a list of software installed in the last 7 days. So those are time-limited. Again, they're only available in professional and enterprise. I think there's 8 or 9 of them. It's important to note that those cannot be edited. So reports themselves, the actual physical reports, cannot be edited. However, you could create queries that have very, very similar filters to the existing reports in professional and enterprise if you wanted to. So I'm going to switch over to Open-AudIT. So I'm in the Open-AudIT Enterprise Edition interface. The professional interface is very similar, but it has a few less feature points. And of course, the community interface doesn't include this really slick dashboard or the ability to edit it and create custom dashboards like this. But you'll notice in the top, we now have a menu option called Report. So in the past, we had broken reports, queries, and summaries out into their own menu options. Users came back and said that was difficult to understand. They couldn't really visually or logically understand the differences between queries, reports, and summaries. And so what we did is we organized them instead together under one menu. And so just pulling up an example query. So you can see here, for example, these are all reports under discovery. These are all reports that can be run. These are all time-based, and again, they can't be edited. I'm just going to pull up hardware device. This is a query that I use often because of its format. It's simple to use, it's simple to understand. It pulls back a wealth of information in the columns of this report. So you'll see, for example, I have a small visual icon of the device. I have the device type, the name of the device, the domain, the IP address, the manufacturer, model, the serial number, the operating system family, and if it was assigned an asset number for that device. From here, I can also edit any of these devices. So I can do a bulk edit process using the checkboxes down the far right-hand column. And of course, clicking the view icon on any of these will burrow down and give me the device details for that device. So I'm just drilling down into this router. And so now I have access to this information. An important note, you'll notice in the top right-hand corner here, we've got some nice filters. I can list all my queries from here. I can export this query in several different formats. I have a search pane, which is a very simple filter. to search through the contents of this query, and then I have an advanced filter as well. So these are provided automatically. These features are provided and populated automatically in Open-AudIT Professional and Enterprise. But just as an example, I might search for, let's say, all OS X devices, and you see that we have two computers in the database. We actually have my computer, the laptop I'm running this demonstration from, Mark's MacBook Pro 2, and we have Paul's MacBook Pro. Paul is one of the associate engineers here working out of our office in North Carolina. So I can do a quick search that way, and I can also pull down an advanced filter. And from the advanced filter, I can now start choosing different attributes that are available in this filter. And that is important. I can only search through the columns that the query provides me. So the attributes even here are just limited to just the columns that are pulled back by the query itself. And the query, once we start looking at them, are really nothing more than a very basic SQL statement. Heading back over to PowerPoint now. You'll notice that most of these PowerPoint slides have a link at the bottom. That link will go back to the Opmantic Wiki, and I've tried to put in links that kind of cover or generally speak to the content that is on the slide itself. So let's talk about summaries for a moment. What I just showed you was an example of a query. A summary, again, gives you kind of a middle layer. It's the concept of a group by. Let's take a look at a summary. Report, let's say services. So now this has given me a summary, and you can see that up in the breadcrumbs in the top left. This is a summary file. It's called the services summary. And what it's done is it's returned a list of all the services and how many computers, how many devices have that service installed on it. So for example, if I look at Apache 2, so here's Apache 2, and I look across, I've got 4 devices with Apache 2 installed on them, or running that service rather. So now if I click on view, it'll go from this middle layer, this middle menu, down to a listing of all of the devices that have that service. You'll also notice that this device list has been customized. That's been done in the summaries designation to include the service name and the service state. So those are some pretty cool things that you can do. You can actually, with a summary, you can append additional fields to the generic list of ones that come back in a summary in order to give you, again, additional fields for you to search on. And once more, you can, summaries just like queries, I can export these. I can send this out as a CSV, a JSON file, an HTML table, or as an XML file. So I'm showing this to you to give you just a concept of what a summary is and how they differ from queries. Today, again, we're going to be focusing today's discussion primarily on queries themselves. However, if you like the concept of summaries, again, at the bottom of this slide, there's a link to the Open-AudIT Wiki and the page which specifically introduces the concept of summaries, and it has plenty of examples on there. And then we also ship with plenty of examples. I think there's 13 or 14 different summaries that Open-AudIT, even Community Edition, ships with. So you can actually take a look at those, see how they're formatted, see how they're built through the GUI. So let's talk about what a query looks like. And what I've done, this is actually the query's overview. This is actually what the details of an individual query is. So you have an ID number that's issued by Open-AudIT. You can't change that. You don't assign it itself. This query just happens to be number 13. You have an organizational ID that this query is assigned to. Organizational IDs are covered in detail, again, on the Open-AudIT Wiki. I really recommend you read through it. It's the concept of organizing your organization in the shape of a pyramid. So you have one organization at the very, very top, and then you break down into 2 or more organizations underneath it, and then those can continue to branch out. You can assign a query or a summary to a specific organizational level, and if you do something other than default, if you do something lower down in the pyramid, then that summary is only available to devices at that level or below that level. So that summary won't return information about devices parallel to it on different branches or above that level in the organization. A query has a name, and that is usually kind of a plain language. What do you want it to look like in the menu? So that's the name. You can pick and choose which category to go into. If you're editing an existing query, we recommend rather than just editing the existing one, you instead make a copy of it and then put it in the other menu category. So there's actually a menu category called Other. You'll notice if you install Open-AudIT for the first time that as you're going down the Reports menu, that when you select Other, it just gives you a thin line. There's actually no content within it. But you should put all of your custom queries in the Other category. We are looking forward to later this year having the option to create custom categories to create or to save your queries and your summaries into. But you can't quite do that yet. You can actually display it or hide the query in the menu. So that is an option for you. You have in the top right-hand corner here, you have the option to give the query a description. And again, that's something that'll show up on the queries page. We'll show that in a minute. Then you have the actual SQL statement itself. What is the SQL that is executed in order to generate the output of the query? And before you look at this and you start thinking, oh my gosh, that looks really complex. I don't know how it works. I don't know how to build this. Trust me, we're going to go into that in detail today. I'm going to walk you through a couple of different examples, and then we're going to build one together. And the hope in today's session is that when you get out of this session, you'll feel comfortable kind of reverse engineering Open-AudIT's existing queries, understanding how they're built, and then assembling your own and troubleshooting it. All right, so let's go back and let's take a look here. So to access the queries, you would go to Manage, Queries, List Queries. So this is the full list of all of the queries that that Open-AudIT ships with. You'll notice that it shows there's a View button that'll actually run the query and show you the results of it. You have the Details button in blue next to it. That'll give you the page that I just showed you on that PowerPoint slide. You have the name of the query, the description of the query, and the organization that query, again, is assigned to. And once again, and I can't stress this enough, if you assign a query or a summary to an organization level other than the default, the top of the pyramid, it can only report on the level it's assigned to and the devices below it. It cannot generate content for devices that are in branches parallel to that level or above the level that it's assigned to. So I'm just going to pick one of these. So I'm going to pick that device query. This is again, this is one that I like to run, right? So this was the report hardware device. So I'm going to run, or not run rather, but I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to click the Details button, and this is right from that screen capture. So this is ID number 13. It's assigned to the default organization. Its name is device. It's assigned to the menu category hardware. And of course, you can edit any of these by clicking the Edit button and then changing the setting and then clicking the green check mark. I'm just going to hit the X here. The SQL statement itself is over here on the right. And again, I can edit that, and I can scroll all the way to the top. And I can actually copy that if I want to. So I can, if I wanted to make a kind of a child version of this, I could copy that SQL statement and create a new query. you would create a query from the list queries screen. Again, I just clicked the list query in the corner as a shortcut, but you could go manage queries, list queries. And from here in the top right, you'll see there's a button labeled create. I could also do queries, create queries to get to that new query screen if I wanted to. And if I wanted to, I could create my queries or store my queries as a comma separated or CSV file, and then import them in if I had multiple ones to manage. So next, let's move on to how do we actually build a query itself. So we're going to talk theory for a minute, and then I'm going to go back over to Open-AudIT, and we're going to dissect a custom query that I built earlier today for a customer. So what I've done here is I've outlined my mental process. I sat down yesterday and today. I actually built a couple of queries, and I asked myself, okay, what are the steps for doing this? What did I just mentally do in order to put this query together? And the first step is to really, frankly, to spend some time reverse engineering similar queries, or actually each query, to see how they're constructed and the different filters are built, right? So you simply go to that list query screen, you go to the details page, you go to the SQL, little SQL panel, you copy that text out, and you paste it into a text editor. And you do that for several of them, and then you take a look and you see, how are they done? How do they work? Where do they go to? The next thing you do is you define the information you need in your custom query and how you're going to use that information, because that's going to drive things like the order that you list things, the columns, how many columns, what columns you include, what data you want to have displayed, right? The order that you might display that information. And by understanding what information is needed and how you're going to use it, you might also come up with things like filters. For example, you might want to create a query that only gives you a list of all routers, or you might want to create a query that only gives you a list of devices older than 3 years. So once you've kind of got that written down, and I usually I'll use a piece of paper to write down the columns, or I might use an Excel. I might open up Excel, just a workbook, and just start putting in column headings like, oh, I want to have the system name, I want to have the IP address, I want to be able to have the date last audited, I want to be able to have the operating system version number, and start listing things out. The next thing that you do is you identify which tables from the database, from the Open-AudIT database, what tables and fields you need to get that information from. And we're going to show that process in just a minute. There's a couple of ways to do that. You can get that actually from inside Open-AudIT. You can also get it from the wiki. So there's a couple of different ways to get that list of tables and fields information. Once you have that information, I go back and I look at the existing queries. I try to find one that's close to what I want, and then I copy that SQL statement. I remove the things I don't need. I add in the fields I want. I get that working, and then once that's working, then I add in any filters that I need. So again, this is my mental process. So let's take a look at kind of what that looks like. So let's go back over here to Firefox, which is my browser of choice. And earlier today, we had a customer who, what they wanted to do is they wanted to create a custom field in Open-AudIT. So much like no matter how many queries or reports you have, someone always wants a custom one done. No matter how many fields or tables you include in a product like Open-AudIT, someone always has a need for a custom field. All right. And so in this example, we had a client who created a custom field called offsite laptop. So I'm just going to take a look at what that looks like. So for example, we're going to go manage fields, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. We actually have a couple of different presentations that go into custom fields. So if you do want to create a custom field for your devices, we'd have those. We also have resources on our website for it. But he wanted to create a custom field called offsite laptop. He wanted it to be a list, and he wanted to populate it with yes or no. So is this device on-site or off-site? So if it's off-site, then it would have a value of yes, and if it was on-site, it would have a value of no. So this is the defined custom field. Again, this is not a field that ships with Open-AudIT. This is one that a customer wanted to create. And just to show you what that looks like, we could take a look at that hardware device report. And I'm just gonna take a look at my laptop because I know that I've assigned my laptop and a few other devices a value of yes. So if I look at fields, you can see here offsite laptop has been set to yes. And the great thing with custom fields is there's lots of ways that you can set that. It can be done manually. You could do it with an API call. You can do it remotely by searching directly through the database itself and making settings that way as well. So there's lots of different options there. But just understand that I've got a custom field and I have a specific value in it. And what the customer wanted to be able to do was create a list, literally a report, that reported on every single device where the offsite laptop field had a value of yes. So we created that report. I'm going to share with you what that report looks like, and then we're going to show you how I built it. So I created a custom report. I've put this report in the menu heading called Other. Again, custom reports should go into the Other heading. That way you don't kind of confuse them or get them jumbled up or lost with the shipping reports. And you can see we actually have several example reports that are here. Each of these ones at the top, devices missing information, devices older than 3 years, expired warranties, and Nmap port lists. These are all actually included on our wiki as example SQL scripts. And each of these have special filters, and some of them also have special SQL commands like devices older than 3 years that look at today's date and go back 3 years from today to create the window of time. So let's look at offsite laptop, which is the query that I created today for a customer. So it's now gone through this query, quick as a flash, went through the database, pulled a list of all the devices that had that custom field set to yes. And then again from here, I can easily export this list to CSV and then import it into Excel if I wanted to. I can export it into JSON format. I can put it out as an HTML table or put it out in XML. It's important to understand that I can also call this custom report from the Open-AudIT API, which means that I can now automate pulling information from Open-AudIT and pulling it into third-party systems. So if you have, let's say, a BI system, business intelligence system, or maybe you have a performance and fault management system, or you just have some third-party system you want to grab information from here, you can create a custom query to pull information, whatever columns of information you need, with whatever filters you need, in a format that your data interchange layer can consume. Generally speaking, that's going to be JSON. Some older systems prefer XML. You might even do CSV. Again, all depends on how importing it into your third-party system makes sense, right? So this is the results of that custom query. So let's take a look at what that query looks like. Now, I want to leave this custom query on the screen, and I want to open the list queries window. So as kind of a best practices, right? This is a web application. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to use my browser's context menu, my right-click menu, to open in new tab. So that queries list queries screen is now opening in this new tab. That allows me to go back and see the results of this query, right? I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for that query definition, and we'll see that down here in offsite laptop. So that's right here. Again, the green button will execute that query. The blue button will show me the details. And be very careful because the red trash can on the right will actually delete that, and it won't come back. It's gone. So there's no kind of second layer of defense there for you. So I'm just going to click the blue icon for details, so we can look at offsite laptop. And you can see here now that it has an ID number. Again, that's how I would call it if I was using the API. I've got the org ID as default, the name, the menu category I've assigned it to other, menu display is yes. That way I will actually see it in the menu. I didn't bother to assign it a description. I probably should. List of all devices with yes in the off-site laptop field. So there we go. We've got a description for it now. But more importantly, we have a SQL statement. So I'm going to edit this. And what I want to do is I'm going to copy this SQL statement. So I'm going to copy it. And I'm just going to bring over a Scratch window. So everyone needs to have some kind of a good text editor for them to use. For those of you working on a Windows machine, I really like Notepad++. For those of you on a Mac type system, I really prefer BB-Edit. So I'm going to paste that value in. You'll notice now that I'm actually scrolling left and right in BB-Edit. I'm going to turn on what's called Softwrap. It's important to note if you have some kind of a Softwrap feature in your text editor, some text editors will actually include hidden characters that create that Softwrap. So if I modify this and I put this and I paste this back in, I do need to turn off Softwrap. we had a note from one of the users. All hail Notepad++. Thank you very much, Jim. Yes, agreed. So you'll notice now that I've got this piece of SQL. What I'm going to do is let's just separate some of these pieces apart. So I'm just going to add a couple of return carriages here. Again, you wouldn't want to do this when you actually pasted this into Open-AudIT. I'm doing it just so that we can see the different parts of this SQL statement. A SQL query is made up really of three components: a select, which lists all of the tables and fields that you want to return and have available to you on that result. So you'll notice here that we have system ID, system name, system IP, manufacturer, model, serial number, and field.value. So we've got several fields that are here. Each of these are the table itself. So I'm querying the system table and specifically the ID field. I have an alias, and notice my alias is inside single backticks. So these are not single quotes. These are not apostrophes. These are backtick characters. It's important that you understand the difference. SQL requires the backtick character. In most US keyboards, the backtick character is going to be with the tilde character to the left of the numeral 1 on your keyboard. So usually in the top left-hand corner of your keyboard. So I've got the name of the table dot field as, and notice as is in capital letters, backtick system.id. In Open-AudIT, you can, strictly speaking, in SQL, assign a alias other than the table.name. We prefer to use the table.name kind of nomenclature. I've seen other people get away from it. You absolutely can. Strictly speaking, it'll still work, but we prefer to just kind of model best behavior, right? Notice in between each field and alias is a comma. The comma has to be outside of that backtick from the alias. You must include a comma in between each pair of field and alias. If you don't, bad things happen, things blow up. Strictly speaking, in SQL, you could actually leave out the as keyword. So system.id as system.id. So system ID as the alias. You could technically leave that out, and it would SQL would interpret the pair as being the field and the alias followed by a comma. However, again, clean, good system practices include the backtick. So you list all of the fields that you want to show up in your report. So let's. I'm just going to go back to Firefox for a moment. I'm going to switch back to that first tab where we show the actual report. So you see here that I've got name. So you'll see here that we have the system ID is hidden. That's actually part of the view column. You've got system.name. So you've got the name, the IP, the manufacturer, the model, the serial, and then the value. And it's pulling the last characters here as the title for the column, the last character of the alias as the title for the column. The edit column over on the far right, Open-AudIT's gonna include that and gonna manage that on its own, and you will only see it if, as a user, you have authority to edit those devices. So if you don't have that authority to edit those devices, then you won't get the edit column. So the next part of this is the from. So what we're trying to do here is we're telling the system what table to get these fields from. And if you're getting as a primary, so from will tell you from the system table, and then we're also going to be joining the system table with the, in this example, the field table. So I want to be able to pull a custom field in, and in order to do that, I have to somehow link those two tables together. So the system table has a system ID field that's assigned by SQL automatically, and the field table has a link to that called system_ID. So we're going to join those two tables together. So it's going to be able to pull in information from the field table using the system ID. It's using it as a lookup. And the final part of a SQL statement is the where clause. So the where is really all about filtering content. How do I actually filter out content and get exactly the stuff that I want? So how did I filter this query down to give me just the devices that had a field, or that had rather the offsite laptop field with a value of yes into it? And that's where you get the where field. So now this piece, where at filter, now this has to be included with everyone. At filter is a built-in filter inside Open-AudIT. At filter is designed to provide all of the role-limited access to your report, to your query. So for example, should the current user be able to even see the query to run it? Should the current user, if they can run the query, should they be able to get the edit column? That's all controlled by at filter. If you don't include at filter, then every user will have access to that query, and they'll have access to every single piece of feature and functionality that a query can do. So you must include at filter as a requirement. And gives me some additional parameters. So I want to filter on at filter, and in this example, field.fields ID equals 1, and that happens to be the ID of that offsite laptop field, and then field.value equals yes. So a little complex, right? How did I build it? Well, I went to the Open-AudIT wiki. I searched for queries. I read the page on queries. The page on queries also linked me to a workflow page that walked me through how to build a custom query based on a custom field. So I walked through that example as well. I read through that. It had several example pieces, and so I started working from that piece. All right, so the basic process outline is listed here. This page actually goes into how to specifically talk to custom fields, the differences in some different table definitions, because there are two tables in the database, one called field with no S and one called fields with an S. So we talk about those pieces as well, and then how to make queries within those pieces. What I'd like to do is I'd like to actually build right now with you a custom query. So let me show you an example that a client raised with me earlier today. So in this client's example, he has lots and lots of routers in his organization, and many of them have custom modules installed in them. So what I've done is I've just gone, again, to that kind of die-hard query that I like, the hardware device query. I've run that. I've selected the first router that's in that list, and on the left-hand side, I'm going to click module. So you'll see that this router has lots and lots of different modules installed. And some of these are chassis modules, some of these are container modules, some of them are modules or ports or sensors. So lots and lots of pieces. There's power supplies in here as well. So what the client wanted to do was create a query that went through and returned a list of every module in every router and just create that list for them, right? So that way, once you create that list, then you have access to be able to search through it. So the example he gave was these modules often have serial numbers, and he wanted to be able to search horizontally across the database for all modules and all routers for a specific serial number and find where that module was installed. Because in their example, they had part shelves with lots of modules just sitting in spare parts, and technicians would often go and pull a module out and go down and install it in a device and then not remember what device they installed that module into. And so by being able to search horizontally by module serial number, he would be able to pull back and relate that back to the specific device that was in. So let's walk through how I would actually build that. Let's actually build that now. So I'm going to go back to the list queries screen. Some of the things that I know I want to be able to do, I want to be able to pull back a list of basic list of like a device type, maybe a device name, maybe a manufacturer, probably a model of device as well, maybe even the serial number of the device. And then I want to at least have the module description, right? So if I look at the information that's available from my module, I really at least want to be able to have this description field available to me in my report. So I want to be able to say I've got the router name, maybe again the manufacturer, Cisco Systems, the model, Cisco 7206, VXR, maybe even the serial number of the router, and then a list of all of the module descriptions, right? Okay, so now I've got kind of a starting point concept of what I want that query to look like. So if I look through my list of existing queries, there are lots of different examples in here. Here's one down at the bottom called workstations. I like to start with an existing query because in many cases, they will include filters that can be very close to what I'm looking for. So again, I'm going to bring up my little Scratch window here. And I don't need this example field query, so I'm just going to delete that from my Scratch window. I'm going to put this into edit mode, and I'm going to copy that. Now, I don't want to change this query. I'm going to create a new query, but I wanted to capture this SQL statement because I want to use this as a starting point. I'm just going to paste this into BBEdit. So this is going to give me a starting point. Much of this I'm going to cut out and delete, right? I don't need it. But some of it I will. So just to start with, I'm going to separate some of these sections just like I did in the example a moment ago. So I'm going to add a couple of returns here just so I can separate the select, the from, and the where clause. The first things I want to do is I want to get rid of pieces of this that I don't really need. Everybody with me? So I don't really care about the system icon. That's the little character icon on the side. I need to make sure that I keep a comma, but we're going to get rid of the system icon. System type, I'm only going to report on on routers today, so I don't need the system type. I just blanked on the word router for a moment. I do want the system name. I don't really care about the system domain. And again, I'm making up, I'm including or disincluding fields kind of on the fly. You would certainly want to kind of determine what's important to you yourself for your specific query and what's important to you. I also don't need the system IP. So I'm going to have the system ID, the name, system manufacturer, the model, the system serial number. I like that. I like that. I don't care about the operating system family because, again, this is going to be a router. I don't care about the memory count. I don't care about the form factor. So I'm going to delete all those. Now, I also don't care about the processor description. But what I do want to do is I'm going to leave that for a moment because what I want to do is I want to be able to put in the actual module description. So I've got to find what is the table name and the field name. Again, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for this. I want to include the module description in that. Now over here it's called module on the menu. Over here this is called description. So maybe it's called the same thing in the database. I'm not 100%. We're going to take a look and find out. So now in this example, I'm going to go ahead and open up Open-AudIT Community, log into Community Edition, and in the top right, I'm going to select Admin, Database, List Tables. Now these are all of the tables in the SQL database, in the MySQL database for Open-AudIT. So now I'm going to scroll through looking just on the off chance if something is named module. And look, I actually have a table called module here. So I'm going to click details and I'm going to look through this. So it's got an ID, a system ID, a current, a first seen, last seen description, module index, contained in, class text, hardware, firmware, software. These all seem like the same fields that are shown here across this area. Class, description, hardware revision, firmware revision, software revision, serial number, asset ID. So this may be the right table, but I'm still not 100%. So I'm just going to scroll back up and notice that this row count, this table has 663 entries in it. I'm just going to export that data to CSV, and then Open-AudIT's actually going to paste that at the bottom of my page. So I can scroll down and see what the content of this table is. So now look at this. I have ID, system ID, current, first seen, last seen, description. And actually, I could actually copy this and paste this right into Excel if I wanted to, but no need because I can see what's going on. I can see Cisco 7206 VXR 6-slot chassis. And that's this entry right here. So I know now that my module table is the right table for me to work from. And the field I want here is labeled description. So I want that field. So what's that field called here? That field is actually called description. So going back to my example SQL piece, I know that I want to be able to do module.description as module.description. So now I've added a column. I've removed some columns I didn't need from that SQL statement I copied, the sample that I started from, and I've modified processor.description. So again, table.field. I found the table I need. It's called module. I found the field I need. It also happens to be called description. So I was lucky there, right? But I could simply copy this, right? Just copy that. And I've made sure that I've updated both sides, and I'm making sure also that I'm using backticks here and not apostrophes or single quotes. All right. Now, so that's going to be everything that I'm going to have to begin with in my query. My next piece that I'm going to do is I have to do my from and I have to do a left join to include the module table. So from system, I don't have to change that at all. Left join. Now again, remember this was using the processor table. I don't need that. I need the module table, and I'm going to be doing module.systemid. Well, how do I know that? Well, let's go back to the database. So every table connects back to the system table. The system table is the primary, is the common central table in Open-AudIT. It's where every device starts. That's where the home record is. And then Open-AudIT uses all the other tables, the related tables in the database, to store repetitive child content like modules that are installed. So the system ID field here in the module table links an individual entry back to the parent entry in the system table. So this clause, this piece right here, will left join module on module.systemid equals system ID. Now I don't need this. I don't need this at all. So we're going to get rid of that. But you'll notice that there's a field here called current, right? With a default of yes. It's the third field down. We can come down here and we can look through here, and you'll notice that some of these modules are marked as no, some are marked as yes. So if the current field was something that you cared about, that was something that you wanted to filter on, you could include that, right? So you could include that if you wanted to. No need to really put that in. Now we need to go down to the filter, right? Because what I want to do is I actually want to filter only on routers. I only want to return a list of type router. So there are a lot of types of devices available in Open-AudIT. In this example, I only care about returning modules for devices that are type router. I can also go backwards, and I could go back to that original hardware device report, and you'll see that that's actually included here. And this was one of the fields that I deleted from that SQL statement when I first started building it with you just a few moments ago. I don't need that because I'm only going to pull back a list of routers. So having every entry just say type router is wasting visual space. I only have so much horizontal space on the screen, and I don't want to have an extra column in there that's just going to say router. Now, I could return routers and switches, but in this example, I just want to return routers. So let's go back in. Let's go back to here. So literally system.type, I'm going to change that to router. I don't need a filter on anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the rest of this all the way down to order by. Now, because I'm pulling back lots of repetitive information, so every row is going to be an individual chassis installed on a machine. And I want to make sure that everything visually is grouped. I want to see all of the devices from router, or all of the modules rather, from router 1 first, and then all of the modules in router 2, and then all of the modules in router 3, etc. So I'm going to leave this order by system.name statement. It's not required, but it's going to help visually. It's going to help us organize information. Now, the last thing I have to do is I have to get rid of these hard returns. So I'm just going to click here, and I'm hitting just the back key. And before I can copy this, again, and this is just a limitation of BB-Edit. The same problem may exist in your text editor, maybe in Notepad++. I don't know. But I know here in BB-Edit, I have to turn off Softwrap. Otherwise, when I copy, it's going to copy some hidden characters, and this won't work. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to come back over here. We're going to close some of these extra tabs. I'm going to open up my queries, list queries window. I'm going to hit create in the top right corner. So I'm going to give this a list. Router, let's say installed router modules. A list of all modules installed in routers. And then I'm going to paste that SQL statement in. I'm going to pick my menu category. You do not want to leave it blank. You must pick a menu category. Again, use other for custom ones. Menu display needs to be yes, and then I'm going to hit submit. This is going to take a minute. Now it's going to return me back to the list queries screen. Notice it said item and queries created successfully. I'm going to scroll down. These are all displayed in alphabetical order. You'll see installed router modules here, about midway up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. Now, rather than just clicking, again, the view button, now the view button is going to run it, and it'll return me to the actual result of that query. Again, it's a web application. I'm going to right-click and hit Open Link in New Tab. So I'm going to go over to that tab now, and we're going to see what's come back. Now, I've gotten content. Now, on the off chance that I've broken my query, that I've done something, I've got a comma missing, I've got something in the wrong place, this would return nothing. It would actually come back and say no content returned. If you know for a fact that your query should have content in it, and Open-AudIT is telling you that no content is returned, the SQL is not working properly. What you do at that point is you edit the piece, you go back, you go to here, you go back to, again, display, and work on reducing this to its simplest form. So you want to start by removing everything, all of your custom filters. So I would start by removing that piece, save it, and then try to rerun it. If it still fails, you want to start looking through things like the name of your table and your field name. Make sure those are right. Always, always, always double check your backticks. I cannot tell you how many times we've run into situations where someone's copied and pasted and they've used the single quote rather than the backtick. Keep in mind that when you edit this SQL statement, you can also run this from this screen. That can speed up your troubleshooting tremendously because you can make a change, save the change, run the change. And just like we did just a moment ago, I can come here and I can quickly right-click again and hit Open Link in New Tab and get that result. So I have content. Now what I want to do is I want to actually expand this a little bit. I want to add an additional field to this. So I'm returning right now just the module description. So I've got the name of the device, the manufacturer, the model, the serial description. I've got plenty of horizontal space here. I can scroll through this. I can pick an individual device. If I hit view, it's going to open the device details screen. So it's not going to drill into the specific module. It'll just show me the device detail screen. And again, I can export this. I can list it. I can also search through it. But remember, what I want to do is I want to search through the serial number field. And in order to search through it, I have to be able to display it. So I'm going to modify my query. I'm going to add an additional field. So remember, I have to add a comma. Module.serial as, and I'll put the as in capitals, backtick, module.serial, backtick. And now there's no comma at the last select clause. So there's no comma before the from. And so I'm just going to hit check mark. And again, I'm going to right click and hit open a new tab, and you'll notice that I now have my old query, which only had the description, and the new query, which includes the serial number field. All right, let's add an additional one in here. So I'd like to know what class of module this is. So remember that class of module were things like chassis, slot, power supply. So module dot class underscore text as module dot class underscore text backtick, comma, space. Save that, and again, right click and run it. And now we have the class text as well. And of course, that allows me now to do something like search for the word power supply. Notice that this simple search parameter is searching both through the description, so I'm getting power supply container, and I'm also getting power supply class text over here. All right. So we covered some of the troubleshooting concepts. Again, keep track of the differences between single quotes and backticks. Double check your table names. Double check. Make sure you're dealing with the right table. So some tables have plurals, fields with an S versus field. Strip your SQL down to a bare bones. Make sure it works. And keep in mind again that you can always right-click on most of the menu options in Open-AudIT. Because it's a web application, and open the results of that, click in a new tab or new window. So before I let you go today, some additional resources for you. You've got, again, the Open-AudIT wiki itself. Both MySQL and MariaDB have fantastic free online tutorials that will really help you understand SQL. And for those of you who have commercial licenses with Open-AudIT Professional or Enterprise, both of those include support and maintenance. And our support and maintenance team, our professional services team, if you put forth some effort, you try to write your query or your summary, you're having trouble, send an email into support@augmantic.com. We'll be happy to help you write that. That's what we're here for. And if you have any questions at all from a commercial standpoint, if you're using Open-AudIT Community now and you're wondering what professional or enterprise might cost, feel free to reach out to the North American sales executive, Tom Weary, or myself, again, Mark Henry, senior engineer here in Augmantic's North American office. Thank you all very much for your time today. I appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. I hope this has been of help to you. Again, when we shut down the recording, you'll be presented with just a short survey. Please take a moment and answer all of them.